Okay. All right, we've got some folks out there in the audience, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everybody to the last night of the virtual version of the Lunsford Festival. My name is Leela Weinstein, and I'm the director of the festival, and I'm also the program coordinator of the Appalachian Studies program here at the Ramsey Center for Appalachian Studies at Mars Hill University. We are so glad that so many of you could join us tonight. And if you've seen some of our other events in this festival, you may have heard me say this before, but I wanted to share it. When we first found out that we weren't going to be able to gather in person because of the pandemic, I was emailing with one of Bascom Lamar Lunsford's grandsons. And he reminded me that he remembered his granddad talking about a time when they had to postpone the Mountain Dance and Folk Festival because of a polio epidemic. And Asheville had canceled all outdoor group gatherings and that sort of thing, and they had to postpone the festival. And I was intrigued by this, so I went and looked it up in the local newspaper, and indeed there were all these references to this happening in 1948. And while, of course, I don't find the polio epidemic comforting, I did find the whole story rather reassuring, just in the fact that to know that we had been through this before and we had made it through the other end and were able to gather again and come together in fellowship and in music again. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. And we, of course, do wish that we could gather in person, and we really look forward to the next time that we can. But we're so grateful for the opportunity to be able to do this virtually. And it has turned out to be its own kind of special sort of event. We had a banjo swap on Friday night and a ballad swap on Saturday. And they were both really sweet events. So we're really excited tonight. And we're very excited to be ending the Lunsford Festival with fiddles. The fiddle, probably more than any other instrument, has become emblematic of mountain music. On Friday, we talked about the origins of the banjo, and it, of course, came here from West Africa. The fiddle is a European instrument and came here with the colonists and the settlers in the 1700s. There are many, many regional variations in mountain fiddle styles, but overall, you'll find a lot of traces of Scottish fiddling and Irish fiddling, along with a dose of African rhythmic syncopation in mountain music. Before I introduce our first musician, I just want to give you a couple of words about what's coming your way tonight. The musicians are going to go round robin style, and I'll introduce each person before they play. Folks who are in the audience, we can't see you or hear you, but if you have a question for somebody about their fiddle style, maybe about a fiddle tune or their mentor or what they ate for breakfast this morning, you can drop that question into the Q&A function. There's a little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and you can type that question there, and then at the appropriate moment, I will field it to the appropriate person. I also, before we get started, I want to make sure to thank two of my colleagues. The first person is Ted Bruner, who's the Chief Information Officer here at Mars Hill University, and he helped me set up these webinars, and for that I'm extremely grateful. And I also want to thank Dr. Karen Parr. Dr. Karen Parr is the Director of the Southern Appalachian Archives here at Mars Hill. And you'll notice while each person is playing that Karen's going to drop their websites and other pertinent information into the chat function in case you want to research them. I'm going to change the view here. And I want to go ahead and we're going to actually start with Carol Rifkin. And I'm going to do a little introduction. A lot of you probably are already familiar with Carol, but she is an award-winning singer, dancer, and multi-instrumentalist. And many of you probably recognize her, and many more of you will recognize her when you hear her voice, because she's the co-host of WNCW's mountain music show, This Old Porch. Carol was an early member of the Greengrass Cloggers, and she's worked with musicians such as Tommy Jarrell, Doc Watson, and David Holt. She also directs the French Broad Valley Music Association and has done just so much to lift up the music of this region and also her fellow musicians. And she also received a 2016 Lunsford Award at the festival here. So Carol, I am going to hand it over to you.
All right, I think I'm unmuted and happening.
Yes.
I picked a tune of late. I love dance, and so the dance tunes are square. They're not crooked. They're two A's and two B's and real rhythmic. And I played a tune for Arvil Freeman one time that was called Wild Horses at Stony Point, and he said, "That's not Wild Horses at Stony Point, that's Buck Creek Gals, and you've got one too many parts in it." So it's actually Kelton's reel, I think, if you put all the parts in it. But I just love that whole history of, I'm a junkie for, oh, this came from here, and this came from here, and this came from here. So this is just a little dance tune that came over the seas, but...
Thank you, Carol. Can you still hear me with your earphones?
I can. I'm not used to playing with a headset, and it's not that much fun, really.
Thank you so much for that. And I was wondering if you, before we go on, if you might want to say a couple of words about Arvil, since I know a lot of people that we're going to hear from were influenced by him.
I think if you know anything about this music at all, you've come across Arvil at some point. He's got more than mid 80s and has been playing professionally since he was 12. He was on radio, WCBY radio in Bristol, playing professionally at age 12, and would come home and bring the money to his parents, and he's just been such a resource. He's taught so many people. And of course, for me, I wanted to know what he knew as a child. And those are the tunes that I've tried to pry out of him. But he's also taught and touched everyone, probably across this screen in some way, with just really wonderful tunes.
Thank you so much for that, Carol. Appreciate that. Bailey Brandon, we are going to go to you next. Bailey Brandon is a fourth generation fiddler. She's 15 years old. She's a sophomore in high school, and she's been playing since she was 7 years old. She plays a lot with her granddad, Jerry Sutton, and for those of you who have come to the real-life Lunsford Festival, the pre-COVID festival, you undoubtedly will have caught Jerry Sutton playing guitar here. He also has taught a guitar workshop for several years here in a row. So she plays with him a lot. She's also learned a lot of tunes from her teacher, Josh Goforth, who joined us on Friday for the banjo swap. And in addition, she plays the piano and is a member of the Asheville Youth Choir. So Bailey, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So the first tune I'm going to play is called Shoe Fly. I learned this at Swannanoa Gathering from Aaron Marshall. The Swannanoa Gathering has been really influential for me from jamming and learning from all different sorts of people and different styles. So that's been really fun. So I learned this in her old time class.
That was beautiful, Bailey. And we had a little cameo, cameo appearance, I think.
Sorry.
No, that was great. That was very cute. Thank you so much for that. And I'm glad you mentioned the Swannanoa Gathering for folks listening. You may want to look that up. It's a great resource, a week-long event where you can learn all kinds of music from a really big variety of musicians. There's an old time week specifically, so that's definitely a resource out there to look up. Thank you, Bailey. That was so pretty. Susie Gott, we are going to go over to you next. Susie has been with us on Friday for the banjo swap and on Saturday for the ballad swap. So she is multi-talented. She's a fiddler, singer, songwriter, and dancer. She grew up here in Madison County in a log cabin without electricity or running water, and that cabin was built by her father, Peter Gott, who himself a hugely influential figure in this area, and you may have seen him also in the banjo and ballad swaps. She toured extensively playing music in Europe and also became a French chef whilst living in France. She moved back to Madison County from France a few years ago now, and she is joining us here tonight with some fiddle tunes.
Wow, thank you, Leela, for that. I was just, I'm going to reel back to Carol's tune because I learned that as Pigtown Fling and also Stony Point. So there's 4 names for it already. It's really hard to remember the names of tunes to begin with. And when they got so many different names, it just throws more confusion into the mess. But it's that's part of the joy of it all. So it's really fun to be part of this tonight, and particularly with so many young fiddlers. I started out actually when I was 4 years old. My daddy made me this banjo here, which has a pretty little heart in the back. So I started out on the banjo, in fact, but then when I was 9, one of my friends was playing classical violin, and I thought, that'd be fun. So I didn't have anybody to teach me classical violin, so I got a couple of Suzuki books, and Daddy had classical lessons once upon a time, although he certainly had no classical style. So I went through a couple of those, but it didn't stick. And then I started listening to, well, I heard fiddle tunes from the day I was born, so that it wasn't a matter of not having them in the ears. But then Daddy needed a square dance fiddler, so by golly, I better hop too. So I started playing old-time fiddle at the age of 12, old-time and bluegrass. When I was 14, that's when bluegrass kind of became the major element of my life. Ended up playing a lot of music with Don and Marty Lewis, who at that time were the same age. Marty was 14, Don was 10. He was about sky high to a grasshopper, knee high to a grasshopper. My brother played banjo and I played fiddle. And our first gig was at the Smithsonian Institute when I was 14. That was in '77. It came a big snowstorm and we could scarcely get there. And we were Google-eyed at all the Stradivarius around us, and it was great fun. Anyhow, life goes on, and my inspirations over the years, I'll say, have been a combination of some of the fiddlers that, if you're not from here, you'd be familiar with. Certainly Tommy Jackson, who was an old square dance fiddler and also a session player from Nashville. And let's see, Franklin George, who was a West Virginia fiddler who played a lot of Scottish and Irish tunes. Sam Bush, just because he had so much drive and I loved his bowing. Vassar Clements for his craziness. Stuart Duncan for his smoothness and taste. And then for all the local musicians, Arvel Freeman, of course, everybody's been inspired by Arvel along the way. Gordon Freeman, his brother, Tommy Hunter, Arthel Goforth, who was a relative of Josh Goforth's, Domina Shelton, who lived down the road from me, Clenny Shelton, Dale Shelton, and of course, Bobby Hicks, who can go without mentioning Bobby Hicks. And also I'll say Liz Carroll, who's an amazing Irish fiddler and has the most spunky bow arm of anybody I know. So when it comes to bowing, it's kind of a combination of Tommy Jarrell's square dance shuffle, you know, the da 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 da, and Sam Bush's slurs, and then everything else thrown into the mix. So I wanted to start off, there's so many tunes to choose from, but I wanted to start off with a tune that came from Domino Shelton down the road. This is his version of a tune that Bard Ray also played, and it's named after my mother, of course, Polly. So it's called Polly Put the Kettle On.
It was beautiful, Susie. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing about your influences as well. That's always wonderful to hear. Sarah Nell Chase, we are going to go over to you next. Sarah Nell is 15, and she started playing fiddle and classical violin at the age of 6. She plays and sings with her older sister Lillian, who we'll also be hearing from tonight. And she plays in a band with her, and the band is called Lillian Chase and the Deadpan String Band. This past winter, they had a regular Jack of the Wood show here in Asheville, and they also played at the North Carolina Museum of History for the Music of the Carolinas series. So Sarah Nell, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Nell. So I'm going to play Georgia Bell, who I learned from Emily Shad. She's a local fiddle player in Asheville, and I learned this song from her recently.
Thank you, Sarah Nell. That was a beautiful tune, beautifully played. Love that. We are going to head over now to Brian McDowell. Brian McDowell, along with his sister Emma, learned fiddle from Arvel Freeman, who you've heard a little bit about tonight, and then went on to teach himself several more instruments. He's a fourth-generation musician and grew up in a musical family. And he's also an accomplished songwriter and has spent time on the road with several really big musicians, including the Claire Lynch Band, Sierra Hull, and Alison Brown. In 2009, he won first place in not one, not two, but 3 categories, fiddle, mandolin, and guitar, at the National Flat Picking Championship. So we're very excited to have Brian here tonight, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Brian.
Thank you so much, Leila. I'm so honored to be here and be participating in the Lunsford Festival again. I grew up hearing about Bascom and was around his festivals, you know, the Mountain Dance and Folk Festival, since I was as young as anybody here, and grew up hearing his music and hearing stories about him through Arvel, who actually traveled to Texas with Bascom when he was, I think, 16 or something like that, with a square dance, and ended up having appendicitis on the road and didn't get to finish the tour. But so it's a great honor for me to be here, and I would like to just start off with a tune that I've heard Bascom play, and was recorded, I believe, on one of his later albums. And this is not perfectly his version. It's hard to match. It's a little bit straightened out in kind of my own way, but it's The Banks of the Ohio. And I think everyone hopefully will recognize it.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was so pretty. It's lovely to hear a slower tune as well. You know, that's really, really lovely. Thank you. Lillian Chase, we are going to go back to the Chase household, and we are going to go now to Lillian. Lillian is 16 and she's a frequent performer at the Lunsford Festival. You've probably seen her play here before. She's a sixth generation Western North Carolina native and started playing fiddle at age 6. She also sings and plays stand-up bass and classical violin in one of the Asheville Symphony Youth Orchestras. She's performed at Merle Fest, Song of the Mountains, and the Carl Sandburg Folk Festival, and already has an album under her belt. So Lillian, Lillian, I'm sorry. We're really glad to have you here tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. So like Leila said, I started playing when I was 6. I started with classical and I've continued since then doing classical. But I started to get into fiddle. Ever since I started, my classical teacher would teach me tunes, just standard kind of in the middle of bluegrass and old time, that kind of stuff. And then I started to get more into fiddling, and so I went to Swananoa Gathering, and that kind of got me started. And then I took fiddle lessons from Michael Ismario for a couple years, and then after that I took from Arvel, and his fiddling just really, he influenced me a lot, and he's just an amazing fiddler. So I'm going to start with the tune I learned from him, and I forgot about for a long time, and then I brought it back up, and it's one of my favorites now. It's called Old Time Great Eagle.
That was wonderful, Lillian. Thank you. I love that slide on that high string. It's so satisfying. That's great. Thank you so much for playing that one. We are going to go over now to Rhiannon Ramsey. And Rhiannon is actually here in the Ramsey Center. We are socially distanced. She's in a different room. She's here in the Ramsey Center at Marshall University with me. And Rhiannon is 17. And she is a native of Madison County, and her family goes back several generations here. She also studied fiddle with Arvel Freeman as a child, and she's now the leader and main fiddler in Rhiannon and the Relics. And if you've been at the Lunsford Festival dance for the past few years, you will know Rhiannon and the Relics because they provided the dance music for the dance the last couple of years. And we're really excited to have her here tonight. So Rhiannon, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Leila. So yeah, as she said, I've taken lessons from Arvel since I was, I think, like 9 years old, so a long time. Anyway, and 2 years ago, I actually took Arvel's spot, and the Stony Creek boys, he retired, and so I took that position, which was a huge honor. Some big shoes to fill for sure. And a guy that Arvel talks about, I think Susie mentioned him, a guy that influenced Arvel was Tommy Hunter. And I'm actually going to play a tune that I got off of one of his albums, and it's called Big Cabin.
That was beautiful, Rhiannon. What a beautiful, rich tone you get out of your fiddle. Which actually we have had our first Q&A question, which relates directly to that. Michael Fisher in the audience would like you to tell us about your instrument. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your fiddle?
Sure. So I actually bought this fiddle from Brian McDowell. He might could tell you more about it than I could, honestly. I bought it from him, I don't even know, a few years ago, and it is my all-time favorite fiddle, so I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Let's see. Okay, I believe that's a copy of a Strat that I had for years, and actually I got it from Arvel years and years and years ago. So if I believe, can you hold it up to the screen? Yeah, that's the one. I remember playing it quite a bit. Yeah, I'm so happy you're loving that one and satisfied with it. You sound so great playing it.
Thank you. I love it.
Thanks, guys. That's wonderful. It's fun to see the path of the fiddle. Before we go around again, I just want to mention a couple of things to our audience. I want to remind people that we do have the Q&A thing in the bottom if you have any questions you want to ask anybody. I also want to share that the Ramsey Center, the Southern Appalachian Archives here at the Ramsey Center, were recently selected as one of 6 partners to be part of a digitization project by UNC Chapel Hill's Folklife Collection, Southern Folklife Collection. And what this means is that we recently have gotten a whole lot of our archival recordings of old Lunsford festivals and also the Bard Ray Folk Festivals digitized, and they are available online for your viewing pleasure. So Karen has just shared the link to them in the chat there, and I really encourage folks to check them out. It's absolutely wonderful. You'll see a lot of familiar faces just from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, etc. And it's real fun to look through them. So I want to let you all know about that. Also, for people in the audience who are just learning about mountain music and about old time music, another resource that is really good for you to check out is the Blue Ridge Music Trails website. And on there you can look up all kinds of different instruments, like you could look up the fiddle and learn about different fiddle styles or ballads or banjo or dance. It's a great resource out there, so I just want to share that with everybody. And I think let's just go on ahead to Carol. I see that there are some questions, but let's have Carol start playing and then I'll check out those questions.
I think having been in music all my life, I just never had enough sense to not do it, I guess. But the longer you play, the longer you see all the regional differences in styles and different ways of playing and different ways of holding the bow and different, tunings. And I think different people become popular, and I loved Tommy Jarrell. I loved working with him. I used to sleep on his couch with his dog Bolivar there. He had this big fat black dog and work with him. But the one thing I know about this area I've really found, and I mean, I think that Rhiannon just like epitomized everything so beautifully, everything about this area, that it was about honoring the melody a lot of times, especially in like Southern Kentucky, East Tennessee. Fletcher Bright and Arville were very similar. And it wasn't bluegrass, it was longbow and it's a whole other can of worms there. But anyway, Rhiannon, that was really beautiful. You definitely honored the melody on that. So let's see. I think I'll do an Arville. I hope I can get through lately, I've been hearing around a lot. Doc Watson, it's on a new recording that just came out. He calls it Twinkle Twinkle, and I'd never heard him play him. But it's Twinkle Little Star.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. And we actually got a question for you while you were playing. Somebody else named Carol in the audience wants to know what bowing you are using in that tune.
I'm using a longbow on that, which is not bluegrass and not an old-time shuffle. It's more, it's from the 20s and 30s for the most part that I can see, but I feel certain it comes from the Irish influence. Kind of, that's my opinion, and I'm playing with my thumb in classical style. I have played probably in all the different things, but I think that's right.
Thank you, Carol. Thanks for answering that. Bailey, we're going to go over to you, and I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about some of your musical influences.
Yeah. So certainly my fiddle teacher Josh, I've been taking from him for probably maybe around 3 or 4 years. I'm not entirely sure, but he's been a big influence. And then all of his past. So the song I'm about to play, actually, he learned from Bruce Green. So everybody kind of gets everything from each other, which I think is really cool. I also certainly enjoy playing with my grandfather, so he and his little group have certainly been influences for me, and just hearing everybody play at Shindig and at the Lunsford Festival has been great. So this one is called McClanahan's March.
Cool.
That was lovely, Bailey. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for playing that. Susie, we are going to go over to you.
Hey, well, I've been having a ball, just soaking up those notes. And yes, Rhiannon, your fiddle is absolutely amazing sounding. But I know that you're responsible for a lot of that amazingness and probably most of it. So that combination is just magic. I was thinking about what Carol said about honoring the melody, and that hit home with me when I was in my mid-20s. I played with Crazy Eddie Adcock. In case anybody ever listened to Eddie and Martha Adcock at that time, he used to play with the original Country Gentlemen and had quite a unique banjo style, and even had an instrument that he built called the gitbo, which was a combination of banjo and guitar, and it had two necks, and he'd play that sometimes. But anyway, in '85, I think it was, we backed up Mac Wiseman for the Masters of Bluegrass tour with Bill Monroe and Jim and Jesse and Ralph Stanley and Mac Wiseman. And I was at that point listening a lot to Vassar Clements and trying to keep up with all these hotshot fiddlers and playing just about anything but the melody. And I remember a sobering moment when Jesse McReynolds took me aside and said, why don't you just try playing the tune? And that has been one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. So going on to thinking of what tune to play just now, I enjoyed that Tommy Hunter tune so much. I've got another Tommy Hunter tune up my sleeve that I haven't played in, let's see, how many years? 40 years. I played this tune at my graduation from high school, equating all the different parts. It's got 6 parts to the different phases of going through high school. And this comes back around. This was also, I think it's a Texas contest tune, and it also goes under the name of Lady's Fancy. But Tommy called it, Say Old Man, Can You Play the Fiddle?
Thank you, Susie. And a 6-part tune is no joke, ladies and gentlemen.
Especially with my kind of memory.
That sounded great. So when you played it at your graduation, you were equating each part of the tune to like another stage in high school?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Neat, neat. Well, that was an exciting tune. It brings you on a little dramatic trail there. That was wonderful. Sarah Nell, we are going to go over to you now.
Um, so this next tune I'm gonna play, I guess, I learned from Arvel. When I started taking from Mr. Arvel Freeman, then I didn't really know any tunes, not really, not very many. So he taught me a bunch of the standards, and so I'm gonna play Soldier's Joy.
That was great. You sound great, Sarah Nell. And I'm glad you played Soldier's Joy. That's one that you can really trace the tune right back to Scotland. So that's a really neat tune. Thank you for that. Brian, we are going to go over to you now.
All right. I'm just taking some notes on tunes that I want to learn now. So let's see. What should I think about next? Well, I guess I should play. Well, this is another one that was learned from Arvel. Kind of a good segue there. It's Billy in the Low Ground. It also has very deep roots. Billy in the Low Ground. It actually some geeky historian facts here. It actually refers to, if I'm not mistaken, William of Orange of the Netherlands, which would be what, 1700s, something like that. So it's that old. It's a lot of these tunes like Flowers of Edinburgh, Billy in the Low Ground, things like that. If you go to Ireland today, they'll still be playing them in jams, and most likely under different names, sometimes in accents that you can't understand. But they'll be the same tunes. You'll be able to play along. But this is Arvel's version. I wish I knew his brother Gordon's version. Gordon was a great influence on Arvel. I think he was about 15 years Arvel's senior. And I heard a great version of Gordon playing this on a collection of tunes, and I at the moment cannot locate the collection. It's kind of rare and hard to come by, and I couldn't find it anywhere on YouTube or Spotify or anything of that nature. So. But here's Arvel's.
Yeah, that was great. And I didn't know Billy in the Low Ground was a reference to William of Orange. That's so fascinating.
Yes. It was also, I believe, the same place that Rockabye Baby in the Treetop. That was a political statement, that nursery rhyme. And if Arvel was listening, Mr. Arvel, I was sure not to play the F chord. I went to the A minor. Duly noted.
Duly noted. Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Lillian, we are going to go over to you now.
Okay, I'm just going to play a peppy old-time tune called Old Bunch of Keys. I learned this a while ago from Rena Gellert at Swananoa Gathering, which Bailey mentioned as being really influential, and I've loved going there and learning from lots of awesome different people. But this one comes from Tommy Jarrell. The trick with playing it with other people is that you never know if someone's going to play the B part 3 or 4 times, and I tend to think 3 is more fun, but I kind of go back and forth. So.
Beautiful, Lillian. Thank you so much for playing that. That is a peppy tune. It's a beautiful tune. I love it. Rhiannon, we're going to go over to you, and we actually have a question in the Q&A for you. And that question is from Sylvie Davis, and she wants to know if any of your siblings or family members also play instruments.
All right, so I have 6 siblings, and none of them play music, unfortunately. I wish they would. I'm like, we could have a family band, but and my parents don't play either. But I have some more like extended family that play. A couple of my dad's siblings play, and then his dad, my grandfather, was known to be like he was a phenomenal banjo player. But when my dad was 2 years old, he had an accident and lost his left hand. And so he can't play anymore, but there's like old tapes of him playing and stuff. And then on my mom's side, actually my great-grandmother played the violin, and I have one of her violins. So yeah, not immediate family, but there are musicians out there for sure. And I think the tune I'm going to play is Margaret's Waltz, which is known as kind of like a Roger Howe tune. He plays it a lot. That's where I learned it from. And Roger actually fixed my great-grandmother's fiddle. I was given that fiddle by my grandfather, and it was kind of just in shambles, and he fixed it right up, so he did a really good job. He does all the work on my fiddles and stuff, so I'm going to play his waltz.
That was so beautiful, Rhiannon. That almost brought tears to my eyes. That's so pretty. And I'm so glad you mentioned Roger as well. For those of you, probably a lot of people in the audience do know Roger, but if you don't, Roger Howell is just one of the just prettiest fiddle players around, and I definitely encourage you to check him out. The Ramsey Center actually a few years ago produced a lovely little short film about Roger, which if you're local, we do have that here in the Ramsey Center. And Roger also recorded a memory collection of fiddle tunes, and I think it's over 600 tunes. It may be even higher than that. Karen just actually put the link in the chat there. Definitely check that out. He sat down and recorded these tunes from memory, and it's just really phenomenal, and it's a treasure, and we're really happy to have it. Another resource that I wanted folks in the audience to know about, if you are listening and you are a young person who's thinking of getting into traditional music, or if you have kids or grandkids in your life who might be interested in traditional music, you might want to check out the JAM program. That's the Junior Appalachian Musicians Program. It's all over a bunch of Appalachian counties in North Carolina, Virginia, some in South Carolina, Tennessee. And they have classes in all kinds of traditional instruments, banjo, fiddle, dance in some of the programs, and it's a really great resource out there. So I encourage you all to check that out. And Carol, you may want to talk a little bit about that also. And actually, you are up next, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Oh gosh, they're all so good. I hate to play after them. Yeah, the JAM program is pretty amazing. Madison County has a really terrific JAM program. The only region, and so does Transylvania County. I've just helped Henderson County, and I'm currently the director of the JAM program there, and it's really wonderful. It's just the kids really enjoy it. It's fun. So anyway, check it out in your area. If you're watching, there's JAM programs all over a 5-state region. I think they're up to 56. And Lila is a great resource who helps the people in JAM as well. So Lila, I'm sorry. I also was going to say, referring to Roger Howe, that this fiddle that I love and play all the time, although it's kind of given out on me, I bought for $75 at an auction because I wanted the tailpiece. I knew it had once been a really good instrument, and Roger said, "What do you think if I tried to put that together?" and so I have it. But let's see what to play. A few things too. I've realized I've been doing this a long time, and I've had a magic life. I've been lucky, but I know, thinking back of people like Art Hash and Ralph Blizzard and Tommy, it didn't used to really matter whether you played 2 A's and 2 B's. You were supposed to, but they often didn't, and no one would have dared said anything about it. The fiddler was kind of always right back then, I think. So anyway, what to play? Arvel and Roger and Tommy Hunter, who taught a lot of what Arvel learned melodically. All of them used to go to Miss Hyatt's jam. They would drive down. And Arthur Smith, the great fiddle player Arthur Smith's son, Ernest, lived in Madison County for many years. And he would come down with Tommy Hunter and Roger to Miss Hyatt's just every week. And so I feel like, and one time he and Arvel sat down with a tape recorder. And the quality's not good on it, but I love to listen to it. And they just sat down and recorded Arthur Smith tunes together and old tunes. And this is one of them. It's the Red Apple Rag.
Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, I can pose this to you, Carol, but other folks might want to jump in, maybe Brian and Susie. A few people have mentioned Tommy Gerald tonight, and for those of you who, in the audience who don't know, Tommy Gerald was a Surrey County fiddler, wonderful fiddler, associated with the round peak style. Could you characterize the difference between that style and like a Madison County style? Is that a hard question?
Yeah. It's really easy to tell the difference. They were different regions, and they had really, although within that region, other people played different styles. But Tommy cross-tuned on almost everything. He played more chord and less melody, whereas here everything was about linear, honoring the melody for the most part, I think. But there's lots of other opinions on that.
Thanks, Susie. I mean, Carol, I'm so sorry. I was looking at Susie's picture. Anybody else want to jump in on that at all, like the Madison County style? Okay.
I guess, I guess I'll go. So yeah, similar to what Carol was saying with the melody, I would say the melodies tended to be a little bit more complex in Madison, like the Madison County fiddlers that I think of, Arville, the Freemans, Roger, and other players around here. And Tommy had a very like kind of driving and a very interesting kind of like rhythmic pattern to his bowing, his right hand. Not really anything that I could demonstrate, but the melodies were it almost kind of brings to mind to me a little bit more of like a banjo player playing fiddle. I don't maybe that's the best way that I could, like a clawhammer or banjoist playing fiddle.
Yeah, like a rhythmic drive. Yeah, sorry, Susie. Go on.
Yeah, Susie?
I would add to that a lot of the fiddlers around here were employed to play square dances quite a bit. So that shaped their fiddling to some extent. There weren't as many grace notes as there are in the tunes as they came over from Ireland. So I think they slowly sort of got dropped out because they were playing faster and they had to keep up with the banjo. And they also, and this was heavy on the Scottish and Irish influence, they also played a lot of drone notes. So what Brian just played was really typical of that. Double stops, or just, often not a double stop at all, but just having one open string that's playing along with whatever note you're playing, even if it's not necessarily in the chord. In fact, I would say that they most often had that drone note that was somewhat discordant rather than playing those beautiful double stops that Bobby Hicks plays, for instance. So yeah, square dances influenced things a lot. And then there were some other fiddlers like Bard Ray, who didn't play so much drone. he played more melody. He also played with about 2 inches of his bow. As I remember, I was always fascinated with how little bow he used. But man, could he play those tunes. And I'm thinking about the Ramsey Center and I'm thinking about your archives. And I have an old recording of Daddy and Bard from back in the early 60s playing about 60 different tunes together, just the two of them, nothing else in the background. And there are several tunes that I never even heard my daddy play since. But anyway, that's I need to figure out what to do with that.
Ooh, I've got one other thing I'd like to add to that, if that's okay. One of the things I saw, I used to go play at the Tommy Jarrell Festival every year, and of course, I remember the difference, huge difference between Tommy and the way he played in Madison County. When I remember somebody saying to me, "What's the matter with you, girl? You ain't got no minors on that guitar." After playing in Mount Airy, they play all the minors in Madison County and more. They love that mournful kind of Celtic sound. But the big difference is the way people held the bow for the most part. Tommy Jarrell held the bow on top. No, he didn't. And Arvil, Kenny Baker, lots of people hold the bow, from that era under here from their thumb around. And then I've gone from that to, back to the classical style of thumb in on the bow. But I think the bowing style is really significant because if you listen to Benton Flippin, who lived not very far from Tommy Jarrell at the same time and played, he sounds just like Arvil. Now he plays the same tunes and everything. So there may have been choices at that time as music was coming forward. I know a lot of people have asked me about it, and one thing that Arvil and I have talked about is that no one woke up one day and said, because it's a living tradition, no one woke up one day and said, "Hey, we're not going to play mountain music anymore. We're not going to play all the time. We're going to play bluegrass." There's a long period there where it's just all mashed in together, but I think bowing styles were really significant to the way they held it.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for sharing your opinions on that. Appreciate that. Bailey, we are going to go over to you now.
All right. So I'm going to go back to another waltz. This one's called Swanano Waltz. And I know that there's a really good recording of Rena Gellert. I know Lillian talked about her a little bit. So that's a really good recording to go check out. But I also learned this from Josh as well, but he is another good resource. He is teaching at AFTA, which is Academy for the Arts, and it's based at First Baptist Asheville. So most every instrument that you can think of, from classical to voice and still bluegrass and all the things. But so that's really fun, and so that's where I take, and so that's been super helpful and great to have that there. So this one's called Swanano Waltz.
Thank you, Bailey. That was beautiful. Beautiful. Susie, you are up now.
All right. Well, I was thinking of all the things I didn't say. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that while I've not had the privilege of studying directly with any other fiddlers besides my dad, I've got to give credit to my daddy. He taught me the first 100 fiddle tunes I learned when I was 12 years old, and that was the basis for everything that came afterwards. By then, I was able to listen to tunes on records, and we had nothing to slow them down. And of course, there weren't all the videos that young folks have nowadays, which make it so much easier. But um, that was a huge influence. And also, I wanted to mention Ernest Franklin, who's another fiddler from this area, from near Shelton Laurel, between Shelton Laurel and Sodom Laurel, more or less. And he made fiddles. He, in fact, made me my very first fiddle, which was almost unplayable, but it was fun to fool around with. And there are some recordings of him. Um, you mentioned the other day, End of an Old Song. I think it's on End of an Old Song. It's either that or Going to Cades Cove. It's one of the New Lost City Ramblers recordings from back in the 60s. There's one of him playing Lost Highway, which is beautiful. So given that there's limited time, I wanted to play a tune actually that I wrote. I think this was the first tune I ever wrote. I think I was about 15, and for some strange reason, I went to school in New Hampshire for half a year when I was 15, and I was lonely as heck for for the mountains back down here. Much as the New Hampshire mountains were beautiful, and I got to climb all the high peaks there while I was there. But I wrote this tune called "Lonesome for Madison," and it's kind of a combination of all the fiddlers that I grew up listening to.
Thank you, Susie. That tune is so evocative of those lonely feelings. That's great. That's great. Thank you. Sarah Nell, we're gonna go over to you.
Okay, so this next tune, I'm gonna play. Yes, I've learned a bunch of tunes during coronavirus time because I've had some more time, and I learned this one from Emily Shad. So it's called Mike in the Wilderness.
amazing, Sarah Nell. Love that. That's a great tune. Tell me the name of the tune again.
It's called Mike in the Wilderness.
Mike in the Wilderness. I like that. Do you know where Emily got it from?
I think. Do you remember? Don't remember. Who's the one she got a lot of her tunes from, though? Sure. Okay. Well, I think Clyde Davenport. Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah, Emily learned a lot of her tunes from Clyde Davenport. I don't remember if this was one of them, but it might have been.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah Nell. That's great. Brian, we're going to go over to you.
Can I quickly? Oh, she's leaving. Never mind. I thought I'd ask, while we're on the subject, what was your first tune, Sarah Nell?
It was called Georgia Belle.
Oh, Georgia Belle. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
All right. I love that. I guess I'm not going to do too much talking here. There are a couple tunes here. I'm enjoying this so much. This is I'm so glad this is the way I'm spending my Monday night, and all of you as well. I have a couple of tunes here that I'd like to do. I guess I'll just throw. I guess I'll just start with. I'll just do Sally Gooden here. This is hopefully as close as possible to the original 1922 version of Eck Robertson. He put out the first. Carol might know a little bit more about this. He put out the very first country music recording, 1922. I can't remember the label, but it was. This is one of the very first tunes recorded, and it's Sally Gooden. I'm not going to do it cross tune, but the original version was cross tune, and his bowing pattern was something like this.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay, so Lillian, we're going to go over to you now.
Okay, I'm going to play a tune I learned during quarantine, and this one is called Laughing Boy, and it comes from a Texas fiddler named Benny Thompson.
Thank you, Lillian. That was just beautiful. Thank you so much. We just got a comment in the Q&A from Susie from your Uncle Dave, who says how much he's enjoying all the wonderful fiddlers, and he says that he's lucky to be your uncle. So I thought I'd share that with you. It's very, very sweet. We're happy to have you here, Dave. I am going to turn it over to you, Rhiannon.
Alright, so the next tune I'm going to play, I think I'm going to play one called First Day in Town. It's a G minor tune. Arvel taught it to me. It's kind of funny, like a lot of times he would teach me similar tunes at the same time. I guess he would play one that would remind him of another. And so he taught me 3 G minor tunes in like the same week. And this was one of them, so.
Thank you, Rhiannon. That was just beautiful. Just beautiful. Was it hard to keep the all the different G minor tunes apart in your head?
Yes, it was. I remember, and there was one time he taught me, for all you fiddlers, he taught me Sally Ann and Sail Away Ladies the same day. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't keep them straight. So, but made it through.
Well, good job. You kept it straight tonight. It was beautiful. And I just want to say how grateful I am to all of you musicians tonight. You all just sound fantastic. And I think that we can probably make it all the way around one last time. We've got about 25 more minutes, so let's see what happens. Carol?
All right, I will play. Harper calls it a standard, and I guess he calls it Miss McLeod's Reel, which is what they still call it in Ireland and Scotland, but in Boone it's Did You Ever Hear the Devil Uncle Joe, and other places it's Hoplite Lady and all that, but
Thank you, Carol. Thank you for that. Bailey?
Yeah, so I'm going to finish up with one of my favorite tunes. It's called Mason's Apron. I learned this one as well at Swannanoa from a fiddler named Jeremy Kittle. And the more I've played, the more I realize how much I love different styles and how I try not to limit myself about like old times. So I really love like the Irish and Scottish influence. So that's really fun. So this one was learned in a Scottish class, and it's again called Mason's Apron.
wow, that's beautiful.
Thank you, Bailey. That's wonderful.
That's beautiful. Oh,
Yeah. Susie?
Yeah, I'm going to play a really, really short tune so everybody else can get one in. And this one is from Bard. It's one of the first tunes I ever learned, and it's in the key of C for all you fiddlers out there. There's not a whole lot to it, but it's nice and droney and weird. It's called Wild Goose Flight. And I've never heard anybody else play this but Bard. So if anybody else has heard anybody else play it, let me know. I enjoy hearing it again.
Thank you, Susie. That's so pretty.
You're welcome. And one more thing I wanted to mention, a couple other influences, because these were really important people and passing along all these tunes and the beauty of their bowing. Of course, Kenny Baker and also Byron Bernline and Texas Shorty for his absolute ease. I remember seeing him sit with his back against a tree outside of Nashville, and he played with the most absolute ease. He would just, and his tip for tone was just to place your bow on your fiddle. You don't have to press, you don't have to make it hard. Just put your bow on your fiddle and draw it across the strings. And of course, I, having grown up playing square dance tunes and trying to compete against the banjo, press down way, way more than I need to, and it doesn't have to be that hard.
That's great. That's a good thing to remember in music in general. Like, you know, if you're pushing it, it might not be the right thing, but yeah, to have it sort of feel easy while you're doing it is a lovely reminder. Sarah Nell?
Okay, so the next one, since we weren't able to go to any fiddle camps this year, we went to an online fiddle camp. A Chopin one online, so we did that one, and I learned this tune from Jake Blunt there, and it's called Smoky Hole,
Which is funny because.
no,
Okay.
okay, well, relates to one of our cats in a way.
Great, that's a fun tune, Sarah Nell. I love that B part. Has that little unexpected piece in it. That's really nice. Brian, we're going to go over to you now.
All right. That was a very, very nice tune. Smoking the Hall. I'd like to play a tune now that I learned from a well-known banjoist, melodic style banjo player around this area. I didn't learn it directly from him. I learned it from his grandson. It was with the Best family. So Carol Best was the banjoist, and his grandson was Jared Best. And I'd like to play it now. This is a tune that they used to do in a medley that they referred to as Nut Medley, but this is Chinkapin Huntin'. It's one of the versions of Chinkapin Huntin', and it kind of seems like it fits very well against that B part of that last tune. So let's see how. It's kind of the mirror image of it, actually.
Fun. Thank you, Brian. That was great. Lillian, let's head over to you.
Okay, I'm gonna play a modally really fun tune called Goodbye Girls, and this one comes from Mako Sweet.
That was great. Thank you so much, Lillian. Rhiannon, you want to play us a closing tune?
Sure. I think for the last tune, I'm going to do one called Angeline the Baker. And this was one of the very first tunes I learned. And as I mentioned before, I play with the Stony Creek Boys now. And but the very first time I ever played with the Stony Creek Boys, I was 8 years old, and I was at Shindig on the Green, and Arvel wanted me to come play, and I thought he was going to go play with me. And as we were walking out on stage, he just stopped, and I was like, "What are you doing? I need you to come up here with me." And he was like, "They only need one fiddler." And so I went up there and I played with them, and it was a pretty cool experience. But I think that's a good example of just kind of who Arvel is. He's very humble, and he would always give up his spot for any of his students. So anyway, I'm going to close out with Angeline the Baker.
Thank you so much, Rhiannon. Thank you. That was great. I love the droning on that. It was just so pretty. Well, a few things before we sign off. First of all, I want to make sure to thank my colleagues again, Ted Bruner and Karen Parr. And I also want to say to folks out there who want to know more about what we have going on here at the Ramsey Center for Appalachian Studies, check out our Facebook page. If you go to Facebook and look for Ramsey Center for Appalachian Studies, you can see it on there. You can also go to our website on the Mars Hill University webpage. We normally have a lot of things going on, a lot of programs. Of course, those are not happening right now, but definitely keep up with us, and we hope that that will change in the future. I also want to say that we will share this recording with everybody who's tuned in tonight, and we'll also share with you the links that Karen has been dropping into the chat. So keep an eye out for that. And also just remember to go to that Blue Ridge Music Trails website if you're interested in learning more about this music. If you want to learn any more about the folks who are playing tonight, you can check out the Lunsford Festival website. It's lunsfordfestival.com. We've got biographies up there for everybody. And a big, huge, warm, giant thank you to all of you musicians who joined us tonight. I'm going to put you on the grid view so that we can see everybody at one time. I really appreciate you all sharing your time and your hard work and your talent with us tonight. You all just sounded great. And thank you all to all of you in the audience for joining us. And we're going to wave goodbye. They can see you guys if you want to. Bye, everybody. Good night.